The incomparable Jackie Chan has been thrilling audiences for over 4 decades with his singular combination of insane martial arts skills and great comedic timing. The other quality that sets Chan apart from his peers is that he does his own stunts, no matter how dangerous, cheating death virtually every time he makes a movie. Here are a few scenes that posed grave danger to the life and the limbs of one of the greatest action stars of all time. Drunken Master. Snake in the Eagle's Shadow was one of Chan's first lead roles back in 1978, introducing his distinct comic touch and distinguishing him from the great Bruce Lee. The movie also featured rising star Hwang Jang-lee, the king of the leg fighters, whose powerful kicks have become legend. Jang Lee and Chan's on-screen chemistry was so good that Jang Lee was cast as a villain in Chan's follow-up Drunken Master. While shooting Snake, Jang Lee had accidentally kicked out one of Chan's teeth. But Chan had apparently failed to learn his lesson. He suffered one of his first major onset injuries when one of Lee's thundering kicks connected with his brow bone, breaking it and nearly causing him to lose an eye. In a 2014 interview, Hwang Jang-lee was asked to rank his top 5 kung fu fighters, and he didn't hesitate to rank Jackie Chan at number 1. Project A. In 1983's Project A, Hong Kong police team up with the Coast Guard to fight pirates at the turn of the 20th century, and it's pure slapstick comedy by way of blinding martial arts and insane stunt work. One of the most dangerous things Chan ever did appears in the finished movie, and it may have been the first scene to give audiences the notion that Chan may be superhuman. In the scene, Chan's character Ma dangles from the face of a 60-foot clock tower, but things don't go well. After losing his grip and falling 6 stories through a couple of awnings, Chan lands directly on his head. Chan injured his spine during the stunt, but the camera doesn't cut away. Instead, extras drag him to his feet and he continues the scene. Police Story. The Police Story series has been particularly hazardous to Chan, starting with the 1985 original. At the climax of a prolonged brawl inside a shopping mall, Chan jumps from a railing onto a pole covered in Christmas lights. The glass was fake, so Chan at least wasn't sliced to ribbons, but the lights had heated up the pole, causing him to sustain serious burns on his hands. The hard landing also dislocated Chan's pelvis and injured 2 vertebrae. At least the stunt looked great in the finished film, because there was no way they were getting a second take. Armor of God. It was a completely routine shot that resulted in Chan's closest brush with mortality. While shooting the 1986 film Armor of God in Yugoslavia, Chan had to jump from the wall of a castle to a nearby tree branch, a maneuver that he'd normally be able to pull off in his sleep. Instead, he came crashing down onto the rocks below, cracking his skull and sending a piece of it into his brain, resulting in doctors having to put a metal plate in his head. It seems like the kind of thing that might put an action star out of commission for good. But the near-fatal injury simply became the highlight of Armor of God's outtake reel, and over the next 2 decades, Chan would continue to risk it all for the enjoyment of his millions of fans. Armor of God 2: Operation Condor. The second film in the Armor of God series, released in 1991, sees Chan in Indiana Jones mode, chasing after hidden treasure and dealing with secret cults and hidden Nazi bases. It's packed to the brim with crazy fight sequences and stunts, but it was another reasonably simple task that nearly took Chan out. Clever editing hides Chan's terrible tumble during filming. In the extended scene, Chan actually loses his grip on the chain and plummets to the ground. Even though he had dislocated his sternum, he gives a thumbs up. It could have been worse. If he had landed differently, he might have finished the job he started on Project A and dislocated his head. Police Story 3: Super Cop. It's safe to say that most leading men have never had their face rearranged by a helicopter, but Jackie Chan is not most leading men. An incredibly perilous sequence in 1992's Police Story 3: Super Cop has Chan leap onto a rope ladder dangling from a chopper, while the pilot attempts to shake him off. That wasn't even the dangerous part. When the helicopter later lands on a moving train, all Chan has to do is avoid it as he dangles from a rotating railway apparatus. A miss revealed in the outtakes resulted in a fractured rib, broken shoulder, and a dislocated cheekbone. Chan had to hang on with his good shoulder while half conscious, waiting for the crew to cut him down. It's easy to see how much worse it could have been. The Legend of Drunken Master. It took 16 years for Drunken Master to receive a sequel, 1994's The Legend of Drunken Master. Its climactic fight sequence is legendary, but it was almost very different. Chan disagreed with the director's vision for the final scene, and the conflict led to him quitting the uncompleted production. Chan himself took over directing duties and decided to repeatedly risk lighting himself on fire. What makes the sequence even more amazing is that the take in the finished film is the second one. Chan felt that the first take didn't have the proper rhythm, so he shot it again because he's apparently invincible. Who Am I? 1998's Who Am I places Chan in the middle of international intrigue, working with a CIA agent to solve a mystery surrounding missing scientists while dodging hitmen in scenic locales, and of course performing one of the most insane stunts ever put to film. Rotterdam in the Netherlands is home to Willemswerf, one of the world's more unique skyscrapers. It features a sloping glass facade that runs down one entire side of the 24-story building. In the climactic scene of the film, Chan slides down the entire length of the facade. Chan accomplished this stunt by literally just sliding down the entire length of the facade, unassisted, with no harnesses or other special equipment, exactly as seen in the film. The slide takes nearly 45 seconds to complete before Chan comes to a bone-jarring halt, catching himself from flying over the edge. It took him 2 weeks to work up the courage to attempt what might be the most dangerous stunt ever put to film. New Police Story. Since the old Police Story series obviously wanted him dead, Chan could have been forgiven if it wanted to skip the 2004 reboot New Police Story. But in characteristic fashion, he threw himself into the film's kinetic action scenes with gusto. In one particularly terrifying scene, Chan pursues a gang member who distracts him from the chase by gunning down the driver of a loaded double-decker bus. Chan leaps onto the roof of the out-of-control bus, which proceeds to cause massive property damage while the hazards come at him fast and furious. It's easy to spot about 100 things that could have gone wrong during the filming of this sequence, any one of which could have resulted in Chan literally losing his head. But if it weren't crazy dangerous to shoot, it wouldn't really be a Jackie Chan movie.
Reality TV can go light on the reality sometimes, and presenting events as authentic and unaltered while secretly scripting and staging important scenes is common. Here are a few events that survivalist Bear Grylls didn't really have to survive, but it sure made for a better story on screen. The Sierra Nevada mountain region is home to some of the last truly wild horses in the United States, and wild Mustangs have lived in this area for centuries. In a Season 1 episode of Man vs. Wild, Grylls was shown attempting to lasso some of the steeds, but it turned out that these Mustangs might not have been so wild after all. The crew reportedly hired them from a trekking station near their filming location. These were actually relatively tame animals that were accustomed to being around humans, according to a Sunday Times of London report. Of course, that doesn't play as well to audiences. What makes for a more interesting scene, showing Grylls trying to sling a lasso around a wild Mustang, or admitting that the crew essentially rented a few horses that weren't actually running wild? The answer is obvious. Everyone knows that an active volcano poses a threat because of all the lava, and there are other dangers that can be present, like toxic gas. In an episode of Man vs. Wild, in which Grylls explores the Mount Kilauea volcano in Hawaii, he's shown working to avoid patches of molten lava and clouds of so-called killer gas. But a safety advisor for the show told the Sunday Times that while the gas should be avoided in large quantities, the drama on the show was heightened using off-camera smoke machines. As for the lava itself, the crew used burning coals to make the scene look more dangerous. An active volcano is scary enough, they probably didn't have to add all that. In Man vs. Wild, Grylls is supposed to be on his own in whatever inhospitable environment he ended up in. After all, it's called Man vs. Wild, not Grylls and his crew lending a helping hand versus Wild. But it's been revealed that Grylls has been assisted by his crew on several occasions without letting the audience in on the truth, even when he was not in immediate danger.
I was getting dive bombed by these seagulls.
After serving as a consultant on the show, survival expert Mark Weinert told The Times, "If you really believe everything happens the way it's shown on TV, you are being a little bit naive. For instance, in one episode that Weinert worked on, Grylls supposedly built a raft using only natural materials that he found around him, like hibiscus twine, palm leaves, and bamboo. However, Weinert said that he personally worked with a team of builders to put the raft together, and it was taken apart so Grylls could be filmed putting it together on camera. In addition to Mark Weinert, Grylls and his crew often brought on other survival experts as consultants on Man vs. Wild. There was nothing shady about that in particular, as long as they weren't doing Grylls' work for him. But on at least one occasion, a consultant later revealed that this was exactly what was going on. Nick Vrooman's worked with Grylls on an episode of Man vs. Wild in Western Australia. Vrooman's told the Herald Sun that while he enjoyed his experience working on the show and thought that Grylls was a good person overall, viewers should know that the show was predominantly scripted. Vrooman's also explained that he was often responsible for building Grylls' shelters and finding him animals to eat. In this episode, it was snakes. Admitting he was disappointed by the final cut of the episode, Vrooman's added, "Whatever he does isn't survival, but it's definitely entertaining." Les Stroud is the host of the show Survivor Man, which had a similar premise to Man vs. Wild. But Stroud insists that his show was a much more realistic picture of what it's like to survive in the wild, and Man vs. Wild was basically a sham. Stroud is not a big fan of Grylls, and he made this very clear in a Reddit AMA in 2013. He stated that many of the survival skills that Grylls had taught on the show would actually not be very helpful. For example, Stroud singled out an episode in which Grylls was shown squeezing drinking water from elephant dung, something Stroud claims would be impossible unless the crew specifically soaked it with water beforehand.
That is a first.
Moral of the story? Man vs. Wild shouldn't be seen as a realistic documentary-style show. It's entertainment above anything else. When Jackass Forever premieres in theaters on February 4th, it will mark the fourth movie in the Jackass franchise and the first since 2010's Jackass 3D. As usual, it will feature wall-to-wall death-defying stunts and gross-out gags. Without getting into spoilers, this new film should give Jackass fans everything they love and more. One way the movie will be different than its predecessors is that the main cast has gotten bigger. Even better, some famous faces will be showing up, including musician Machine Gun Kelly and comedian Eric Andre. It makes sense that Jackass is adding some new blood, given how much has already been spilled over the years. Many of the stars are now firmly middle-aged, and the toll on their bodies is more and more difficult to shake off. In Johnny Knoxville's case, one stunt from Jackass Forever convinced him to hang up the vans, at least for now.
Hello, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass!
Knoxville spoke about the stunt in a new interview with Variety. While he didn't get into specifics for spoiler reasons, the stunt involved doing a magic trick in a bull ring. He explained, "I wanted to prank an animal, and that's what we came up with. The bull wasn't amused and plowed into him, flipping him over and knocking him out cold." A preview of the stunning moment is featured in the latest trailer for the upcoming movie to boot. Jackass Forever director Jeff Tremaine said of Knoxville, "He was snoring for 3 or 4 minutes. It was gnarly."
The bull did not appreciate it and just absolutely smoked me worse than I've ever got smoked in my life by a bull.
According to the publication, paramedics arrived and loaded Knoxville into the ambulance. When they asked him who the president was, Knoxville replied, "Obama," which was unfortunately incorrect, given that filming occurred in December 2020. He then joked to Variety, "Maybe because that's who I was wishing for. Please, please, Obama." Knoxville is no stranger to injuries, but even for him, the damage was pretty severe. A broken wrist, a broken rib, a concussion, and a brain hemorrhage. When asked whether it was his first hemorrhage, he couldn't remember. After leaving the hospital, the Jackass ringleader worked with a neurologist to recover his cognitive skills, which took about 3 months. In the meantime, Jackass Forever producers in Knoxville agreed to scrap the rest of the stunts planned for the film. Knoxville noted that the thought of putting himself back in harm's way was no longer an option. He went on to say, "My family doesn't like me doing this type of thing. This is the most wicked bull hit I've ever taken. It's arguably for the best that Johnny Knoxville is moving away from performing stunts."
Electrocution is so-so. I had a blowout fracture of my left eye on a stunt where my eye popped out.
The bull stunt in the upcoming Jackass Forever feature is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to stunts the star has put himself through for the sake of good entertainment value. And although fans have no doubt enjoyed watching Knoxville test his limits on camera, he's certainly paid the price for doing so from a physical standpoint.
Can you feel my heart?
Wow! In September 2021, Nova Legal Funding put together a list of the cost of medical treatments necessary to treat a variety of serious injuries Knoxville has sustained over the years on Jackass. According to the group's estimations on their site, Knoxville has had somewhere in the neighborhood of $25,000 worth of hand stitches. Additionally, $30,000 has been spent on face stitches. His crotch injuries have cost a total of roughly $120,000, and the broken hand and rib injuries have racked up approximately $200,000 in medical bills, respectively. Among the more exotic and costly injuries Nova Legal Funding included in their list was an alligator bite that they say cost Knoxville $100,000 to care for, as well as a brain hemorrhage, which the Jackass star potentially spent upwards of $2 million to treat. When you add these to a whole slew of other injuries he sustained, Knoxville is estimated to have paid nearly $8.7 million to put himself back together.
Good times.
With all of his injuries, including that wicked Jackass Forever bull stunt behind him, Knoxville sounds like he's more than ready to watch his friends go to the extreme from the sidelines. While speaking with Variety, he declared, "I've done enough. I don't have anything to prove. I have kids to raise. That's the most important thing."
Shark attacks, mid-air collisions, and plummeting to their death. Unfortunately, these stunt actors lost their lives making these movie scenes a reality. Harry O'Connor, who served as a stunt double for Vin Diesel and XXX, died on the Prague set of the film while performing a paragliding stunt in his place. An experienced skydiver and stunt performer who joined the industry after retiring as a Navy SEAL, O'Connor reportedly collided with the pillar of the Pulaski Bridge while paragliding and broke his neck in the process before passing away. It was his second effort to complete the stunt, the first of which was successful and used in the movie. Director Rob Cohen later said on his commentary track, "We had 500 stuntmen involved with this picture. 499 didn't get a scratch. It shows you the lengths to which we will go to bring this kind of intense experience to the viewer. Stuntmen know they are in danger. They make their living through danger. Most of the time, it's all right. Sometimes, unfortunately, it isn't." O'Connor was 44.
You are America's best. Make us proud.
Stunt pilot Art Scholl had become internationally renowned for his aerial stunt work in films like Blue Thunder and The Right Stuff before he was selected to complete an inverted air stunt that would become a big part of the storyline in Top Gun. According to the Los Angeles Times, Scholl was heard relaying his in-air troubles during production on the scene, saying on his radio, "I've got a problem here." Scholl was highly skilled at the maneuver, so colleagues concluded that there must have been a mechanical failure that caused his vessel to crash. However, neither he nor his plane were recovered from the debris, despite a search effort, so the details leading up to his death are unknown. The mystery that surrounds the failure that cost him his life still lingers with his widow, Judy Scholl, who told the Daily Mail, "Art didn't say what the problem was. This is the one thing I'm not happy about with him. So I don't know if he had a control failure, where maybe the camera jammed into the flight controls, or whether he had an issue with the flight controls where he wasn't able to get the airplane out of the flat spin, or whether he was disoriented. He didn't say." Scholl was 53. In one of the grisliest accidents to ever occur on a Hollywood set, stuntman Jose Marco, a double for Burt Reynolds, was brutally attacked by a real-life shark while shooting an underwater scene for Shark. Marco was filming alongside a subdued bull shark in scuba gear when a great white managed to make it through the nets protecting the area from the rest of the sea, and charged at the camera crew before launching at Marco and disemboweling the actor where he swam. Crew members tried to steer the shark away from Marco with spears, but the animal was undeterred, and the stuntman's resulting injuries were so severe that he died shortly after being transported to the hospital. The incident was catastrophic, but producers wanted to and ultimately did use the footage of Marco's death in the movie, along with publicizing the incident as a marketing push. Director Samuel Fuller was so disgusted that he disavowed the movie, unsuccessfully attempting to have his name removed from its credits. Marco was 32. The Vancouver, Canada set of Deadpool 2 became the site of a tragedy in August 2017, when a stuntwoman named Joy S.J. Harris was killed while attempting to complete a motorcycle sequence for the film. Harris was substituting for actress Zazie Beetz as the character Domino, and was not wearing a helmet during the scene in question to match the character. Harris had successfully completed the stunt 4 times in a row, but on the 5th attempt, she lost control of the vehicle and went airborne before careening into a glass building. Local news crews reported that she was treated on site by paramedics after the incident, but was later taken to the hospital and ultimately declared dead. In a statement, a rep for 20th Century Fox said of the incident, "We are deeply saddened by the accident that occurred on the set of Deadpool 2 this morning. Our hearts and prayers are with the family, friends, and colleagues of our crew member during this difficult time." Lead actor Ryan Reynolds echoed that sentiment, writing on X, formerly known as Twitter, "We're heartbroken, shocked, and devastated, but recognized nothing can come close to the grief and inexplicable pain her family and loved ones must feel at this moment. My heart pours out to them, along with each and every person she touched in this world. Angela Bassett's double in Vampire in Brooklyn had invited her mother and siblings to the set of the film to watch her work on the day her life was cut short. Sonia Davis's mother, Wanda Sapp, would later reveal that she overheard her daughter casting doubt on the safety of the stunt she was about to perform during their fateful visit. Telling the Los Angeles Times, "The last words I heard my baby say was when she yelled down to the stunt coordinator, 'Are you sure?' I could feel Sonia wasn't comfortable with the stunt." Davis had been performing a 42-foot backward jump off of a building, but rather than landing safely on the airbag that was supposed to cushion her fall, she instead bounced back into the building before making impact with the ground, much to her family's horror. Her mother initiated a multi-million-dollar wrongful death suit against the studio, Paramount Pictures, along with director Wes Craven and producer star Eddie Murphy, but the case was ultimately dismissed. Stunt coordinators on the film would later claim in an oral history of the movie that Davis didn't perform the jump correctly, but there were also no ambulances on set during the incident. Davis was 32.
One more! Rest in pieces.
The Expendables movies were envisioned as a vehicle for pure action-driven spectacle, bringing together the biggest stars in the genre. Led by Sylvester Stallone, the films have featured such heavyweight action heroes as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, Chuck Norris, Jet Li, Wesley Snipes, and many more. But with all that action comes the increased risk of disaster. And tragically, that's just what happened on the set of The Expendables 2. During production of a second-unit water scene on Lake Ognaya Nova, Bulgaria, stunt actor Kun Lu was killed and fellow double Nuo's son was severely injured when a planned explosion went awry. The pair were riding on an inflatable rubber raft at the time. Lu was reportedly doubling for Stallone himself, while Sun was subbing for Jet Li in the second-unit shot. Lu was just 26 at the time of his death, and the film was dedicated to his memory. Sun managed to survive his serious injuries and filed suit against Sylvester Stallone and Millennium Films for damages. The family of Lu, meanwhile, also pursued wrongful death damages against the parties responsible for the movie, including stunt coordinator Chad Stahelski, who went on to direct the John Wick films. In 2017, it was reported that the plaintiffs were awarded 195,000 Hong Kong dollars, while Jet Li himself gave 5.8 million Hong Kong dollars to the stuntman's family. Written and directed by the late schlock auteur Albert Pune, the 1982 sword and sandal adventure The Sword and the Sorcerer starred Lee Horsley as Prince Talon, who learns he's descended from noble blood and must take on a powerful and evil wizard. Though it's not one of that decade's most memorable movies in the genre, it made the news after one of the film's performers, 37-year-old John Hale Jack Tyree, died in a stunt gone wrong during production. Tyree was a veteran of the industry who'd worked on everything from Escape from New York to History of the World Part 1. He was filming a scene in Hollywood's Griffith Park for The Sword and the Sorcerer, in which he was to jump from an 80-foot cliff. He unfortunately landed a few feet away from the airbag intended to cushion his fall, causing severe injuries that eventually cost him his life. As reported by the Calgary Herald, an official said at the time, "It was definitely a high-risk stunt, but Jack was a real professional. He had some more difficult high falls before, tougher than the one he faced on The Sword and the Sorcerer." Perhaps surprisingly, the stunt itself was left in the film despite Tyree's tragic passing, and the film was dedicated to him in the credits. The James Bond franchise has built a reputation for its impressive stunts and elaborate action sequences. Each film in the series seems to attempt to top the one before it, and to do that can sometimes mean making the stunts riskier and riskier. But by the time the franchise got to its 12th entry in 1981, For Your Eyes Only, the risk-taking may have gone a little too far. To create one skiing and bobsledding chase that takes place amidst the wintry slopes of Italy, the film involved the use of a four-man bobsled, operated by a second-unit director to better capture footage of the action. Unfortunately, 23-year-old Italian stunt driver Paolo Rigoni fell off the sleigh and was quickly killed after it overturned and dragged him underneath. It wasn't the first or last serious injury to happen on the set of a James Bond film, but it was the deadliest. It's been reported that it was his death, along with the death of professional bobsledder James Morgan just a week earlier during the 1981 Bobsled World Championships, that prompted the decision to shorten the Cortina bobsledding track where Rigoni was killed, to make it safer. Filmmaker John Woo was one of the hottest action directors of the 90s. After a string of groundbreaking features in his native Hong Kong, Woo was wooed by Hollywood and came over to helm such favorites as Hard Target, Broken Arrow, and Face Off. By the late 2000s, he was back directing smash hits in China, and one of his first in his return to his homeland was Red Cliff, starring Tony Leung. It was the highest-grossing movie of the year in the Middle Kingdom, but came at the cost of a stuntman's life. A period piece about the Battle of China's Three Kingdoms, the set of the film became a deadly inferno when a blaze overtook the production, claiming the life of stuntman Lu Yunqing and injuring 6 other crew members. The accident took place during a ship battle scene in Xiaotongshan. just outside of Beijing. During the filming of the sequence, a smaller vessel engulfed in flames was planned to collide with a larger ship, but high winds carried the fire to the second ship and the flames spread uncontrollably, injuring those on board and killing Yan Qing. A statement from the US studio Lion Rock, which was co-financing the film, read, "The crew of Red Cliff is deeply distraught and full of regret." Comes a Horseman was a 1978 Western starring Jane Fonda, James Caan, and Jason Robards. Robards starred as Jacob J.W. Ewing, a rancher who wants to protect his sprawling valley from big business tycoons who would try to exploit it for its natural resources. Working as Robards' stunt double was stunt actor Jim Shepard, who had a wealth of experience on westerns like The Wild Bunch and Hour of the Gun, and even sci-fi outings like Planet of the Apes. In Comes a Horseman, Shepard was filming a scene in which he was supposed to be dragged behind a galloping horse through a fence to simulate the death and disappearance of Robards' character. However, the horse didn't stick to the straight path through a gate as planned, and the unexpected equine maneuvers caused Shepard to be thrown off, with his head striking a fence post. While he survived the initial blunt head trauma, he died not long after being hospitalized. The incident sadly occurred on one of the last days of filming. Although the scene did cut away from the fatal collision, the 41-year-old Shepard's last stunt was still included in the picture.
Hi, guys. Colonel McCoy! I was just in the neighborhood.
Though mostly known for his martial arts movies, Chuck Norris made plenty of military action flicks in the 80s, with Delta Force being one of his most memorable. A surprise cult hit that co-starred Lee Marvin and got a sequel in 1990, Delta Force 2: The Colombian Connection. For the follow-up, it was Norris headlining the action alone as Major Scott McCoy. But, like many other action films, Delta Force 2 also saw a deadly helicopter crash during filming that took the life of a stunt actor. This time, it was in the Philippines where the action sequel was shooting, and it sadly wasn't just stuntman Jeff Brewer who lost his life in the crash. Alongside him were pilots Don Marshall and Jojo Imperiale, cameraman Gotti Danzig, and key grip Mike Graham. Though only 3 men died at the scene, at least 2 more succumbed to their injuries of the nearly a dozen people hospitalized after the accident. To make matters worse, the production company, notorious low-budget studio Cannon Films, had seen the deaths of at least 10 people while filming numerous projects over the course of 4 years. Another film in a long line that saw deadly helicopter crashes during production, Hired to Kill, is like Delta Force 2, a low-budget action movie from 1990. This one starring Brian Thompson, George Kennedy, and Oliver Reed. Thompson plays a mercenary who poses as a photographer when he's hired to rescue a freedom fighter being held behind enemy lines. During filming the year before the movie hit theaters, a helicopter being used to shoot a mid-air scene crashed, injuring the pilot and several others, and killing a stunt actor. The actor, Clint Carpenter, had been a regular stuntman on the kids' action series VR Troopers, and was riding with a pair of fellow stuntmen. While performing what was later described as a routine flyby, moving across the camera's field of vision set up on a rooftop, the vehicle attempted to make a tight turn. For unexplained reasons, the helicopter failed to achieve the turn and crashed into a group of trees, killing Carpenter, who was pronounced dead before he even made it to a nearby hospital. Passengers Michael Caine, pilot Mark Wolf, and stunt coordinator Mark Cutton, along with a third unknown stuntman, all sustained injuries. Though they suffered broken ribs, a leg fracture, and a punctured lung among them, they were able to escape with their lives.
Houston, we have a problem.
Before Apollo 13 in 1995, it was 1983's The Right Stuff that held the title for Best Film about NASA's spaceflight program. Oddly enough, that movie also included Apollo 13 actor Ed Harris, who plays astronaut John Glenn. It recounts the years that led up to the launching of the Mercury 7, beginning when Chuck Yeager first broke the sound barrier, and includes all the incredibly dangerous exploits of test pilots like Yeager, Glenn, and Alan Shepard. The film features several incredible high-flying stunts, and one of them involves a pilot parachuting to safety from the confines of an experimental aircraft. Unlike in the movie though, the pilot never did make it home safely. Performing the scene was stunt actor and Houston native Joseph Svek, both a veteran of the profession and a qualified parachutist. But during the filming of the ejection, Svek inexplicably failed to pull his ripcord. The parachute never opened and he plummeted to his death. According to a manager of the California City Airport where the scene was being filmed, an investigation revealed that nothing was wrong with Svek's chute, suggesting that it was either a simple error by Svek or that he somehow lost consciousness during the plunge. In the 1930s, Jack Budlong wasn't strictly a stunt performer, he was also a professional horseman and actor. But for the 1941 movie They Died With Their Boots On, a Civil War classic about General Custer that starred Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and Gene Lockhart, Budlong was brought in for the film's sprawling war scenes. Reportedly, Budlong played both Union and Confederate soldiers at various points in the production, and it was during one sequence when he was in the Southern Greys that the horse rider was killed. Budlong, who is said to have been a close personal friend of Flynn, had persuaded the star into getting him a role as a stunt performing extra during the film's war scenes. Not much of a veteran stunt actor though, Budlong's inexperience may have been what led him to insist on using a real saber rather than a prop. So, when during filming his horse began bucking due to the simulated artillery exploding around them, Budlong was tossed off the animal and landed right on his very real, very sharp blade. Budlong was taken to a Los Angeles hospital, but it was far too late for him. The saber had punctured his abdomen and exited via his back. He wasn't the only casualty of filming though, as the production of They Died with Their Boots On led to countless injuries and at least 2 more deaths besides Budlong.
You know what's there? Waiting. Beyond that beach. Immortality! Shake it!
Brad Pitt's 2004 ancient war movie Troy, directed by Wolfgang Petersen, adapted Homer's Iliad, the epic poem that depicted the historical Trojan War waged between the Greeks and the Spartans. Its filming was also a massive undertaking and a throwback to epics of the 50s and 60s, which meant it had several large-scale action sequences involving hundreds of extras. It also led to the death of one of the many stunt actors involved in the production. Stuntman George Comieri was admitted to a hospital during filming with serious trauma to his ankle, according to the Times of Malta, while also suffering chest pains and shortness of breath. He underwent surgery, but 2 days later he was dead. Though initially it wasn't realized that his death had been related to an on-set accident, a later inquiry traced the cause of Comieri's death all back to injuries he'd sustained while filming an action scene on Troy. An autopsy revealed that Comieri's death was caused by pulmonary thromboembolism, with the report stating, "Pulmonary thromboembolism is not an uncommon complication following trauma, fracture of the lower leg, surgery to the lower limb, and immobility." According to the investigation, the initial injury occurred when Comieri had been jumping over the side of a galleon, but mixed signals between extras led to him making an error and jumping from the wrong spot, which he hadn't been prepared for. The 1965 film The Flight of the Phoenix starred James Stewart as a pilot whose plane crashes in the Sahara. Desperately trying to keep himself, his crew, and his passengers alive in the remote desert, his only hope is a passenger whose experience as an aircraft designer has him convinced they can build a new plane out of spare parts from the wreck. It's a nail-biting tale of adventure and survival, but in the making of the movie, a famed stunt pilot who was hired to make risky aerial maneuvers lost his life. An experienced racing pilot who'd worked in Hollywood since the 1930s, Paul Mantz was well known for helping Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan prepare for their first attempt to circumnavigate the globe. He was practically pilot royalty in his day, but that didn't mean he was invincible. During filming of The Flight of the Phoenix, he was flying low in a sequence meant to simulate a takeoff when something went wrong and the plane crashed, killing him. Ironically, it wasn't even Mantz who was supposed to be behind the controls that day, but his partner Frank Tallman. At the last minute though, Tallman injured his knee and Mantz filled in. With Mantz's death, The Flight of the Phoenix may have been a cursed production. In 2004, Dennis Quaid starred in a remake that seriously injured cameraman Kieran Barry. He received $1 million settlement, though no one was killed. Movies about dangerous professions are inherently going to involve precarious stunts. So when it came time to film a story about the construction of a skyscraper, there was extra danger involved. Experienced stuntman A.J. Bakunis was doubling for lead actor George Kennedy on the Lexington, Kentucky set of Steel when tragedy struck. In the scene, he attempted a daring drop that would feature him plunging from the top of a high-rise to simulate the falling death of Kennedy's character. Bakunis was a well-known name in the industry long before he went to work on the film. By all accounts, he had been preparing for the jump for weeks and decided to increase the length of his fall to 323 feet instead of the 9th-story leap he'd already completed. He wasn't doing it to make the stunt more impressive, but instead simply hoping to top a stunt performed on another set by rival stuntman Dar Robinson, who was still nearly a decade away from his own fatal stunt. Bakunis completed the jump as planned, but the airbag below ruptured, injuring him critically right in front of a massive crowd of spectators who had assembled to watch the stunt. The actor was still alive and conscious as he was rushed to the emergency room and treated, but he eventually succumbed to his injuries. Bakunis was only 27.
One thing I'd like to know, are world records worth the risk?
Movies involving high-flying aircraft action can be fraught with danger and typically require the skills of talented stunt pilots who can pull off death-defying maneuvers. That was the case with von Richthofen and Brown, a 1971 World War I epic about one of the greatest flying aces that history has ever known. A passion project for director Roger Corman, who put up much of the financing himself, the film was shot in Ireland and told the story of Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron, and the pilot Roy Brown, who took him down. Filming the intense dogfights, though, led to a mid-air collision that killed stuntman Charles Boddington. Following the incident, the Irish government decided to shut down the production's aerial scenes that Corman had scheduled for Weston Airfield, not far from Dublin. According to contemporary accounts, Boddington's disastrous crash in the sky wasn't even the last accident during filming. Just a day later, pilot Lynn Garrison and actor Don Stroud received injuries after an unscheduled crash landing in the Liffey River. It probably isn't much of a surprise to learn that there have been some mishaps on the sets of movies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. After all, the overly muscled bodybuilder turned actor is known for his explosive action movies, from science fiction and fantasy to military thrillers. In 1988, filming on his buddy cop action comedy Red Heat went a little too far even by Arnold's standards, resulting in the death of stunt actor Benny Dobbins. The film, which was dedicated to Dobbins, had Arnold in the role of a Russian military captain named Ivan Danko. He's sent to Chicago where he teams up with a local cop after they realize they're both looking for the same criminal. Filled with guns blazing shootouts and bare-knuckle brawls, Red Heat is an underrated Arnie classic, but filming one scene that involved the Terminator star duking it out hand-to-hand with a stuntman who wasn't Dobbins led to a death in an unexpected way. During the scene, Dobbins was serving as the stunt coordinator, helping stage the scene with his two actors when he suddenly collapsed. Suffering a fatal heart attack, Dobbins was airlifted to a local hospital but didn't survive. He was 55 years old and left behind work in many action classics like First Blood, Commando, and The Running Man.
It's time to start running!
There are a small number of gutsy Hollywood stars who insist on doing their own stunt work, but because most A-listers are happy to hand the really dangerous stuff over to the professionals, stunt doubles are always in demand in Tinseltown. Unfortunately, not every stunt has a happy ending. Brushes with death are an occupational hazard for Hollywood stunt doubles, and these were some of the most hazardous. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Warner Brothers tried to use practical effects whenever possible in their Harry Potter series, especially when it came to broomsticks. That didn't mean the studio was happy to put its star witches and wizards on those broomsticks, however. Stuntman David Holmes doubled for Daniel Radcliffe in many scenes all the way back to the first film. During Deathly Hallows Part 1, Holmes was filming a flying stunt when he was yanked from his broom and slammed into a wall before falling to the ground. The accident broke his neck and left him paralyzed at the age of 25. Holmes told the Mirror, "I remember slipping in and out of consciousness because of the pain levels. I knew I had really done some damage." Radcliffe himself thinks of Holmes as a friend rather than a colleague and hosted a charity auction to help Holmes pay for his medical bills. Back to the Future Part 2. The hoverboard scene is one of the most memorable moments from Back to the Future Part 2, though for stunt performer Cheryl Wheeler, it brings back painful memories since she was almost killed shooting the sequence. One stunt woman had already quit over the scene, and Wheeler became concerned after a handful of last-minute changes were made to the rig. After being accused of getting cold feet, the stunt coordinator threatened to put a male stunt performer in her clothes for the scene. Being new to the business and wanting to make an impression, she reluctantly agreed. Instead of crashing through the sugar glass window, Wheeler collided with a stone pillar and was dropped 30 feet onto the concrete below, missing the fall mats entirely. Fellow stunt performer Gary Morgan recalled in the book We Don't Need Roads, "I got up and Cheryl was laying on the concrete and the pool of blood by her head was getting bigger. I thought she was dead." Fortunately, Cheryl was quickly back in action and is still performing stunts as recently as 2015. The Expendables 2. Countless henchmen are maimed and killed during the many explosions that take place throughout Sylvester Stallone's Expendables films, though one of them actually claimed life for real. Stuntman Kun Lu was fatally injured during the filming of a scene in Bulgaria involving an inflatable raft for the Expendables 2. While Lu's life could not be saved, his partner during the stunt, Nuo Sun, somehow escaped with his. According to court papers, Sun sustained damage to his nervous system, neck, head, body, and arms, which left him in great mental, physical, and nervous pain and suffering. The stunt performer sued Millennial Films for $25,000, as well as the cost of his lengthy hospital treatment and recovery. Today, Sun continues to work in the stunt department of films like Ant-Man and Logan. Resident Evil: The Final Chapter. Star Mila Jovovich said it was a miracle her double survived an incident that took place on the set of 2016's Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, which left a British stuntwoman in a coma. According to a Facebook post by Jovovich, "My incredibly talented stunt double, Olivia Jackson, collided with a camera crane while performing a motorcycle stunt and it put her in the hospital with severe multiple injuries. After she regained consciousness, Jackson also took to Facebook to reveal the horrifying extent of the damage, which included a degloved face, brain swelling, an amputated thumb, and a missing piece of bone. She called the incident, quote, not her funnest day on set. In the end, one of Jackson's arms had to be amputated. The resilient Brit posted a picture of her twisted upper body on her Instagram feed in January 2017, claiming that her off-centered neck is the most painful part, saying, "I don't mean to moan, but sometimes I just want to crawl out of my own skin and all the pains in it." For what it's worth, she seems to be keeping in good spirits about her injuries. The Hangover Part 2. Australian stuntman Scott McLean was doubling for funny man Ed Helms in The Hangover Part 2 when the stunt drivers involved in the film's car chase reportedly got their marks wrong and McLean's head was hit by a truck. He suffered a critical head injury, forcing hospital staff to put him in a medically induced coma. McLean was feared dead by his colleagues after the impact, and while he ultimately escaped with his life, his lawyers claim he suffered permanent brain injuries. His wife commented, "There was so much damage, he was a mess. He used to look after me, now it's my turn to look after him for a change." McLean's life will never be the same despite extensive therapy, but today he speaks openly and positively about his recovery.
Unlike our favorite comic book characters, the origin stories of silver screen superheroes often involve more steamed chicken breasts and stationary bikes than kryptonite and dead parents. But while the actors get paid to look the part, it's the stunt doubles who take the hits, the falls and the rubber bullets, all without any of the glory. Let's go behind the scenes to highlight some of these brave performers who toil in the shadows to bring the Earth's mightiest heroes to life. Ingrid Kleinig, Harley Quinn. Ingrid Kleinig has been in the biz for a while and definitely knows the ropes. She's done stunt work on movies as diverse as Superman Returns, Australia, and Iron Sky, but Kleinig really broke into the big time as Evangeline Lilly's stunt double in The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey. Still, if she's had one defining part, it's her work as Margot Robbie's stunt double on Suicide Squad. She and Robbie, who's a dancer herself, became friends while tag teaming the stunts for Harley Quinn. They even held a long-running contest to see who could hold their breath the longest underwater. In the end, they both topped 5 minutes. That's the kind of skill that comes in handy when your job involves crashing face first through a Lamborghini windshield in a water tank. Will Erickson, Deadpool. Over roughly a decade, Will Erickson has built up a huge Hollywood stunt resume, appearing in everything from Tron Legacy to Wayward Pines. In 2016, Erickson scored big when he landed the part of Ryan Reynolds' stunt double during the filming of Deadpool. Along with a team of other stuntmen, Erickson helped bring our favorite regenerating degenerate to the big screen. In particular, Erickson was instrumental in the SUV scene at the start of the movie, and for that, Erickson, you have our heartfelt thanks. Richard Bradshaw, Wolverine. Richard Bradshaw's prolific stunt career spans nearly 3 decades of work on television and the big screen. You've seen his work in movies like The Fifth Element, Titanic, and Tomorrow Never Dies, and he's also been involved in the production of Game of Thrones, serving as both a performer and the show's assistant stunt coordinator for more than 24 episodes. In the X-Men franchise, Bradshaw worked as a performer and stunt double for Hugh Jackman in X-Men 2, The Last Stand, X-Men Origins, Wolverine, and Days of Future Past. William Spencer, Spider-Man. William Spencer earned the name The Skate Ninja on YouTube for his unusual skateboarding style, but he probably never thought his board would give him a career in the movies. The amazing Spider-Man director Mark Webb had other ideas. For his first outing with the Webhead, Webb wanted to do something completely different, and that involved this.
I don't know which way I'm going.
Spencer, who'd spent a few years picking up spare paychecks doing light stunt work on movies like Jonah Hex and Project X, didn't even make it to his Spider-Man audition. Ultimately, the filmmakers couldn't find what they were looking for and looped back around to Spencer, who ended up as Andrew Garfield's double for both Amazing Spider-Man movies. Tony McFarlane, Star-Lord. Tony McFarlane got started as a stunt performer in 2011, and since then he's built up an impressive stunt resume, appearing in dozens of television series and films. With his role in 2015's Jurassic World, it seems McFarlane found his niche as Chris Pratt's stunt double. He went on to double for Pratt in 2016's Passengers, and again the following year in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a role he prepared for by playing with toy guns. Nice. Bobby Holland Hanton, Thor. Bobby Holland Hanton is one of the most in-demand stuntmen in Hollywood. He's doubled for Chris Evans' Captain America, Christian Bale in The Dark Knight Rises, and Ryan Reynolds in The Green Lantern, to name a few. But if there's one gig he's especially proud of, it's getting to bring the thunder as Thor across the MCU. From the costumes to the kick-ass stunt work, Hanton loves everything about this gig, especially star Chris Hemsworth, whom he describes to Business Insider as a legend, saying, Chris is in the best shape of any actor I've seen. He's got huge arms and great coordination. I've never had to train so much in my life. 3 hours each session, twice a day, 6 days a week. If Chris wasn't an actor, he'd be one of the top stuntmen around. But even after all the high-wire stunts he's performed in an Asgardian breastplate, Hanton's favorite stunt is the prison scene in The Dark Knight Rises. He said, "I had to climb out of the prison he's in and jump, miss the landing, fall 100 feet and slam into the opposite wall. It was one of my first ever high falls, 100-footer, which is quite a nice feat to achieve for a stunt performer." Sam Hargrave, Captain America. Although Bobby Holland Hanton has done some stunts as Captain America, it's Sam Hargrave who takes the brunt of the star-spangled beatings. When he isn't acting as the man behind Cap's mask, he's also serving as Marvel's resident stunt coordinator and choreographer, designing some of the most memorable blowouts from Captain America: The Winter Soldier and Captain America: Civil War. Chances are, if one of Marvel's superheroes takes a knuckle to the face, Hargrave is responsible for it on some level. Clay Fontanon, Iron Man. We've come a long way from the chest shavings and paint on latex Robert Downey Jr. had to endure for the first Iron Man.
John, don't Johnny.
Faster!
Between CGI and stuntmen, Robert Downey Jr. barely ever has a reason to put on the Iron Man suit anymore, which leaves Clay Fontanon as the only guy who still has to suit up when the cameras are rolling. Fontanon doubled for Downey Jr. in Iron Man 2, and The Avengers, and he's done stunt work on nearly 80 other films as well, including Django Unchained, Guardians of the Galaxy, and all 3 Blade movies. Fontanon is easily one of the most prolific stuntmen in the business.
They're the unhailed heroes of Hollywood, stunt doubles. From free falls of 50 feet or more to crashing through windows, amazing chase scenes, and incredibly choreographed fights, stunt doubles make most of the silver screen's biggest blockbusters possible. Here's a peek at what they really look like, and more about their amazing stunt resumes. Tanoi Reed is Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. The Rock's cousin Tanoi Reed has worked as his stunt double in nearly 20 different roles, from 2002's The Scorpion King to 2017's Baywatch. Reed has been performing stunts for his world-famous cuz. In addition to being practically as close as brothers, Reed and Johnson frequently collaborate behind the scenes on aspects of their combined performance. Reed has won 2 Taurus World Stunt Awards over the years for his work, as well as working as an actor and motion capture performer for the 2011 video game Thor: God of Thunder. Paul Darnell is Robert Pattinson. For the last 10 years, Paul Darnell has been working as a stuntman when he's not busy competing in parkour and freerunning competitions around the world. Darnell was inspired to start freerunning and doing stunt work after watching a 2003 episode of Ripley's Believe It or Not, which featured parkour. Not only is he a talented stuntman, but Darnell has also been a 2-time finalist on the popular television series American Ninja Warrior. A former gymnastics champion at Virginia Tech, Darnell has built up an impressive stunt reel over the years for himself, including his work as a double for Henry Cavill in Man of Steel, Adam Sandler in You Don't Mess with the Zohan, Paul Walker in Fast 5, and Robert Pattinson in Water for Elephants, Remember Me, and The Twilight Saga, a gig that Pattinson thanked Darnell for when the film won Best Fight at the MTV Movie Awards. Marnie Ang is Reese Witherspoon. Since the early 1990s, Canadian stuntwoman Marnie Ang has racked up more than 100 roles working as a stunt double and stunt coordinator, and has been twice nominated for a Taurus World Stunt Award, among many others. She's doubled for dozens of women and men over the years, but the actress she's performed stunts for most frequently has been Reese Witherspoon. Ang has been her double in at least 3 different roles, including 2015's Hot Pursuit. Ang is also no stranger to acting, and you can spot her as Tabitha, a spoof of the character Samara from The Ring in the 2003 horror comedy Scary Movie 3. Jack Gill is Will Ferrell. There's no question that the hilarious NASCAR comedy Talladega Nights: The Ballad of Ricky Bobby required a lot of fancy stunt driving, and Jack Gill is the man behind that action. Since the 1970s, Gill has worked as a stunt performer and stunt driver on over 170 films and television shows, including as the primary stunt driver on both The Dukes of Hazzard and Knight Rider.
We had a good time on the show, and it was one of those types of shows that was like a family. It was a really tight-knit group.
Over the years, Gill has branched out into stunt coordination and second unit directing, including on several of the Fast and Furious films. With a metal plate in his neck, 23 broken bones, and 8 concussions over the course of his 4-decade career, there's unquestionably nobody more qualified than Gill to testify about the difficulties of the job. Gill has also been instrumental in the push among the stunt community for an Oscar or 2 recognizing the achievements of the stunt men and women that make so many of today's movies possible. Lucy Romberg is Melissa McCarthy. For the last decade, Lucy Romberg has been at the top of her game as a stuntwoman. The Hollywood native is a former champion gymnast and also competes as one of the few females in high-level free-running competitions around the world.
Fell in love with it and haven't gone back.
Over the course of her career, Romberg has doubled for Melissa McCarthy several times, including in Identity Thief, Spy, The Boss, and Ghostbusters. Greg Fitzpatrick is Ben Stiller. In the world of stunt performers, getting a job as the preferred stuntman or woman for one of Hollywood's top stars is the ultimate gig. For Greg Fitzpatrick, that opportunity came relatively early in his career, when he was picked as a stunt double for Ben Stiller in the 2003 film Duplex. Since then, Greg has become the preferred double for Stiller and has since appeared in more than a dozen films as Stiller's stuntman. In addition to his resemblance to Ben Stiller, Fitzpatrick is also a talented stunt performer and coordinator. He's won 2 Taurus World Stunt Awards and doubled for Robert Downey Jr. in both Iron Man and Iron Man 2.
I'm so happy to be allowed to work in a business that I love. I just want to continue to do it.
Vic Armstrong is Harrison Ford. According to the Guinness Book of World Records, Vic Armstrong reigns as the most prolific stuntman in the world. Additionally, Armstrong is one of the few stunt performers to ever break the Academy Award barrier, winning a Technical Achievement Academy Award in 2001. With well over 100 stunt credits and a career that spans 5 decades, it probably wouldn't surprise you to learn that Armstrong doubled for some of Hollywood's biggest roles, including as James Bond, Superman, and Indiana Jones.
I'm not into drugs or anything, but when people talk about a high, when you do stunts, you get a natural high that I guarantee you nobody in the world can match.
Reportedly, crew members frequently confused Armstrong with Harrison Ford on the set of the Indiana Jones films, which resulted in Ford sending Armstrong a photo of the two of them with the humorous inscription, "If you learn to talk, I'm in deep trouble." Billy Lucas is Arnold Schwarzenegger. Since the 1990s, Total Recall stuntman Billy Lucas has had the sweet gig of working as Arnold Schwarzenegger's stunt double on the set of most of his films. From Kindergarten Cop to the Terminator series, if you saw Arnold do some crazy action scenes, it was most likely Lucas's work that you were watching, not Arnold's. In addition to his role as Schwarzenegger's stunt double, Lucas has worked on over 100 different movies and TV shows as a stunt performer and coordinator. Despite his undoubtedly busy schedule, it seems that Schwarzenegger and Lucas have become close over the years. The former California governor even shared a story of how Lucas saved his life during a risky scuba diving shot on the set of The Sixth Day, saying, "I was trapped, then a hand grabbed me and pulled me out. It was my stunt double, Billy Lucas. He'd been watching from below with a tank and goggles and realized I was in big trouble." Randolph Leroy is Will Smith. A Haitian native who immigrated to Brooklyn as a child, Randolph Leroy grew up playing sports and training in Taekwondo. As an adult, Leroy got involved in modeling and also became a firefighter in Miami. A spot as Mr. May on the fire department's promotional calendar began to land him roles in commercials and TV spots in Florida, which prompted Leroy to move to California to try his hand at acting and stunt performing. After being picked as a stunt double for Will Smith on 1995's Bad Boys, Leroy and Smith have become close friends. Since then, Leroy has doubled for Smith on nearly a dozen films, like in 2007's I Am Legend. Eddie Yancek is Nicolas Cage. Only a few short years after his stuntman debut in 1993, Eddie Yancek got picked to be Nicolas Cage's stunt double in the 1997 action film Con Air. Since then, Yancek has doubled for Cage in more than a dozen roles, including Lord of War, Matchstick Men, and Ghost Rider. In addition to his over 70 stunt credits over the last 3 decades, Yancek has also worked as a stunt coordinator, actor, and a second unit director. In 2001, Yancek distinguished himself with his stunt work when he won a Taurus Award for Best Driving for his performance in a Gone in 60 Seconds chase scene between a Mustang and a police car. Tony Angelotti is Johnny Depp. Tony Angelotti is primarily known for his work as Johnny Depp's stunt double in the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise, a job he's held at significant personal cost. An accident on the set of Dead Man's Chest in 2005 nearly ended his career and his life. While rehearsing a human yo-yo stunt, everything went drastically wrong.
No! Oh my god! Oh! Get me down!
The tension on the line was incorrect, and the centrifugal force whipped him around so hard that when Angelotti hit the end of the line, his pelvis was split apart like a wishbone on a turkey. It may not look that bad, but while prepping this sequence, Angelotti broke his pelvis, suffered injuries to his knees, legs, and bladder, and lost a massive 6 units of blood from internal bleeding. But he hasn't let his injuries keep him down. He doubled again for Depp in 2007's At World's End, and continues to work in the stunt field today. Olivia Jackson is Mila Jovovich. Olivia Jackson's promising stunt career was cut short in 2016 when she suffered a near-fatal accident on the set of Resident Evil: The Final Chapter, where she was working as Mila Jovovich's stunt double. Prior to her role in that film, Jackson had worked as the stunt double for Charlize Theron in Mad Max: Fury Road and for Elizabeth Olsen in Avengers: Age of Ultron. In the horrific accident, the motorcycle that Jackson was riding in a scene crashed into a camera crane arm when it malfunctioned and didn't move out of the way fast enough. Jackson was in a medically induced coma for 17 days because of her injuries, which included serious facial trauma, a punctured lung, a crushed arm which had to be amputated, and debilitating damage to her spine and neck. The accident wouldn't be the only incident to plague the set of Resident Evil. Not long after Jackson's crash, a crew member on the set died when a Humvee slipped from a sling and crushed him beneath. For her part, Jackson is fighting bravely to move on with her life, and recently shared some photos of herself on the road to recovery.
In the age of CGI, it's easy for filmmakers to use digital effects instead of actual stunts. And while the end result might look cool, it doesn't quite pack the same punch. However, some of the most incredible movie scenes involve practical stunts that are so unbelievable, you'd never guess that they were totally real. Terminator 2: Judgment Day. When it comes to pushing the envelope in special effects, James Cameron is without a doubt the king of the world. But this VFX revolutionary still believes in using practical effects whenever possible. After all, we're talking about the guy who built an 800-foot Titanic replica and then sank it in a 5-million-gallon water tank. However, in Terminator 2, Cameron took his love for real-life stunts to death-defying levels. Near the end of the film, the 3-time Oscar winner used an actual aircraft during a thrilling chase where a SWAT van attempts to outrun a helicopter. In one stunt, the chopper flies beneath an overpass at nearly 70 miles per hour. But with just 5 feet of room above the helicopter, the camera crew refused to film it. So Cameron shot the sequence himself, pulling off what's gotta be one of the riskiest aircraft stunts in cinema history. Speed. Before he was Neo or John Wick, Keanu Reeves was Jack Traven, a policeman who finds himself aboard a bus that's rigged to explode if it drops below 50 miles per hour. Things get even worse when the bus races up an elevated freeway straight toward a 50-foot gap in the road. Sandra Bullock's character Annie is forced to drive the bus straight into the air to clear the gap, landing safely on the other side. The filmmakers digitally removed that missing chunk of the highway, but director Jan de Bont actually got the bus to fly. Using a vehicle that was stripped down to bare bones, their stunt driver got the bus up to 61 miles per hour before soaring off a ramp built on an LA freeway.
Thank you very much.
Mission Impossible 2. When it comes to performing his own stunts, Tom Cruise is miles above every other actor on the planet. For proof, look no further than Mission Impossible 2. In the opening sequence, Cruise dangles off the side of a cliff without a safety net. So when he flings himself from one rock to another, the only thing keeping him alive is a thin cable. Later on, during an insane fight sequence, Cruise had a steel cable attached to a knife and positioned himself so it would stop about 1/4 inch away from his eye. It's that kind of dedication that proves Tom Cruise is worth every cent he makes, and also that he's totally nuts. The Bourne Ultimatum. In the third installment of the Bourne series, secret agent Jason Bourne throws down with an assassin in what may be the best fight of the franchise. But first, Bourne has to leap across an alleyway and crash through a window. Rest assured, there's no CGI here, just old-fashioned practical effects. Matt Damon's body double leapt from one building to another, smashing through a false window, while another stuntman attached to a wire rig followed with a handheld camera. Skyfall. The 007 franchise is jam-packed with amazing stunts. From the parkour sequence in Casino Royale to the parachute jump in The Spy Who Loved Me. But it's pretty hard to beat the motorcycle chase from Skyfall. Instead of using a green screen, director Sam Mendes decided to put actual motorbikes on actual rooftops in the Middle East. The stunt drivers maneuvered their bikes down concrete strips that were about 1 meter wide. Bond stunt double Robbie Madison explained, "A lot of the rooftops have old air conditioning units with metal stakes coming up. Things that can stab you if you were to fall on them. It definitely was not a place you'd want to ride with no helmet." Iron Man 3. We can all agree that one of the best action sequences in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is Iron Man 3's Barrel of Monkeys scene. When everyone aboard Air Force One is sucked out of the plane, the free-falling crew members form a human chain, allowing Iron Man to safely deposit them into the ocean. Marvel's executives gave their movie wings by hiring the Red Bull stunt team for this sequence. In total, these die-hard adrenaline junkies made approximately 600 jumps over the course of 8 days, with each dive lasting about a minute.
Excellent. Good team effort all around. Go us.
The Fast and the Furious 7 and 8. If you are new to the Fast and the Furious franchise, you might be surprised to learn that a lot of the stunts you see on the screen are legit. Like that scene in Furious 7 where Vin Diesel and the gang parachute from a plane 12,000 feet in the air in their cars. The filmmakers rigged up 4 vehicles with parachutes and dropped them from the sky. Each car was equipped with 3 cameras, and 3 skydivers with helmet cameras also went along for the jump. In The Fate of the Furious, the gang zooms into Berlin and ends up smashing bad guys into oblivion with the help of a 14.5-ton wrecking ball. For the scene, the stunt drivers doubling for the good guys had to get out of the way, but the other driverless vehicles were towed at 40 miles per hour, straight into the equally fast ball of death. Baby Driver. Director Edgar Wright basically mashed up Heat, The Driver, and Singin' in the Rain into one glorious movie. This 2017 heist flick follows a music-loving getaway driver who tries to leave his life of crime after falling head over heels for a charming waitress. And as it turns out, almost every stunt Baby pulls off is the real deal. That includes the jaw-dropping 180 in, 180 out gag from the movie's opening scene. Our hero throws his Subaru into a forward 180, spinning around one truck before throwing the car into a reverse 180, successfully dodging another vehicle. The Baby Driver stunt doubles wanted to capture that realistic feel, even if it meant putting their lives on the line.
Questions?
He always said that he'd be back, but is it time for the Terminator to terminate his action career? This stuntman snafu might make it seem like a good idea. Arnold Schwarzenegger is back in action in Netflix's FUBAR, a twist on the concept of his movie True Lies. The 8-episode series sees Arnie in the role of a grouchy dad and longtime CIA agent looking out for his daughter Emma, whom he discovers also works for the agency. While some fans are happy to see more of their favorite action star, there's one recurring issue that the actor can't avoid in a small-screen soiree. As much of an icon as Schwarzenegger is, it's clear that age is becoming an issue for him, and it's never more apparent than in the series' opening scene. The beginning of the first episode sees Arnie's Luke Brunner leaping into action on an infiltration mission, using a fire truck as cover to sneak past security. The issue is that it's glaringly apparent that Schwarzenegger isn't really who we're looking at, and that it's someone else doing tuck-and-roll stunts and jumping onto fire engines. It makes for a pretty poor first impression, raising questions about later scenes where Arnold is or isn't called into action.
I'm busy anyway, so give this job to my friend here. He loves playing in the jungle.
From hopping between cars and high-speed car chases to jumping out of planes, it's clear that some of the biggest action scenes in FUBAR don't involve the series star. With that in mind, it might be time for Arnold Schwarzenegger to take himself out of the action-packed field and get into some more restrained roles. It's a path that's been taken by other action stars of his era. Think of Kurt Russell in Fate of the Furious or Sylvester Stallone in Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3. They're still in the game in action-packed movies, but calling the shots from the sidelines while the other heroes get in on the action. For the most part in FUBAR, Schwarzenegger doesn't get too involved in the fight scenes, but when he does, it's usually a little more awkward than the creators may have intended. We're not saying hasta la vista to Schwarzenegger, but it might be better for everyone if he takes it easy in his next role. While FUBAR doesn't feature Arnold Schwarzenegger at his physical peak, it's still exciting to see the action superstar take on a brand new role over 5 decades into his career. In recent interviews, the superstar has shared that he knows it's time to evolve and chart a new path as a performer. As part of that, you can say goodbye to the chance of any future appearance as one of his most famous roles. During his press rounds for FUBAR, the actor candidly told The Hollywood Reporter that it was time to call it curtains on the Terminator franchise, a series that made him a pop culture sensation. Discussing the reaction to the series' most recent movie, he said of his involvement, "I'm done. I got the message loud and clear that the world wants to move on with a different theme when it comes to the Terminator. Someone has to come up with a great idea."
I had a retirement plan.
If Schwarzenegger, who has played the T-800 on and off since the 80s, is ready to retire from his most iconic role, what's next? Arnie made headlines recently when he joined Netflix, the streaming service behind FUBAR, as its chief action officer in a marketing video. While it might be best for the actor to become a mentor for the next generation of action mavericks, Schwarzenegger has no plans to take it easy. He told THR, "I still work out every day, I ride my bike every day, and I make movies. My plan is to live forever, and so far, so good."
Stunt performers are the unsung heroes of Hollywood productions, and Ahsokas are some of the finest in the biz. So, who are the faces behind the fights? Standing in as a stunt double for a lead protagonist is no easy job, especially when that protagonist is also a former Jedi. Rosario Dawson handles a majority of Ahsoka's scenes in the series, including a lot of the action, but she doesn't do it all. That's where Michelle C. Lee comes in. Though Lee is an immensely skilled martial artist and stunt woman, she's also a talented actor in her own right. You may know her from her role as Oksana in 2021's Black Widow, or as Violet in the Paramount Plus adventure series Blood and Treasure. Lee's stunt credits are extensive, including everything from Top Gun Maverick to Suicide Squad to Pacific Rim. Beyond film and television, Lee has also contributed her skills as a motion capture artist to a number of major video games. Those credits include Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, The Last of Us: Left Behind, and most notably, the Mortal Kombat series. Lee has worked extensively in the latter franchise, even playing Melina in the 2013 web series Mortal Kombat Legacy. Perhaps it's no surprise then that she was chosen to take on such an important and intensive role during production on Ahsoka. Sabine Wren has a unique fighting style, to say the least. She is trained under Jedi such as Kanan Jarrus and Ahsoka Tano, as well as Mandalorians and even instructors at the Imperial Academy. As a result, her approach in combat is something of a mishmash, equal parts Rebel Bounty Hunter, Mandalorian Warrior, and Jedi Knight.
Take us out.
While Natasha Liu Bordizzo does take a lot of the work in bringing that unique fighting style to life, she has some help too. Ahsoka Episode 7 credits Shao Naomova as a stunt double, a younger performer who still seems to be making a name for herself in Hollywood. Though she isn't marked as a stunt performer for the show on IMDb, Naomova's page does also credit her as playing the role of Lieutenant Jensu, one of the X-Wing pilots who accompanies General Hera Syndulla to Cetos. That particular squadron is apparently full of stunt performers, as longtime Din Djarin stand-in Brendan Wayne also flies a fighter in the same scene. Apart from Ahsoka, Naomova's only credit on IMDb is for playing the Street Fighter character Ibuki in a low-budget TV series. According to iStunt, Naomova was also a competitor on Season 4 of NBC's World of Dance. Hopefully, her multiple roles in Ahsoka will help to elevate her profile and career in the years to come. For a villain with the poise and presence of Ray Stevenson's Baylan Skoll, you need a stunt double equal to the task, and that's exactly what the Ahsoka crew found when they hired Morgan Benoit. You may not know Benoit's name, but you've almost surely seen his work. He was a stunt double for Keanu Reeves in 2013's 47 Ronin, and he has stunt credits on major action films like Terminator Dark Fate, Renfield, and Dune. All of those credits should have been enough to get Benoit the role of Stevenson's stunt double on Ahsoka, but it probably didn't hurt that he also had experience in the Star Wars universe. He has performed stunt work on The Mandalorian since 2020, and he even lent his talents to the big-budget video game Star Wars Jedi Survivor earlier in 2023. In short, he was the perfect man for the job, and Baylan Skoll's intense, aggressive lightsaber fights stand as testament to that fact. Having worked on The Mandalorian probably wasn't a requirement for stunt performers to get hired on Ahsoka, but it clearly wasn't a mark against them. Morgan Benoit wasn't the only performer to move from one Star Wars show to the other. Alicia Vela-Bailey, the stunt double for Ivano Sarkno's character Hati, did as well. In addition to her previous Star Wars work, Vela-Bailey has earned credits as Gal Gadot's stunt double for Wonder Woman and Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. She also played a Themysciran warrior early on in the first Wonder Woman movie. Star Wars isn't the only Disney franchise that Vela-Bailey has experience in either. She's a true veteran of the Marvel Universe, appearing in several of the Netflix shows, including The Punisher and The Defenders, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in which she played the role of Alicia Whitley. Vela-Bailey has lent her talents to the Avatar franchise as well, playing a member of the villainous Recon unit in Avatar: The Way of Water. On that production, she also worked as a stunt double for both Sigourney Weaver and Zoe Saldana. Fans of Star Wars Rebels were more than elated at the end of Ahsoka Episode 6, when Iman Isfandi's Ezra Bridger finally made his on-screen debut. The character is instantly recognizable as a beloved Jedi rogue from the animated series, and Isfandi captures Ezra's spirit and personality perfectly.
The Force is my ally. That's all I need.
It was even more exciting for fans to see Ezra leap into action in Ahsoka's 7th episode, in which Esfandi was assisted by his stunt double, Jason Chu. Once again, we've got a Mandalorian alumnus here. Chu has also worked on Disney projects such as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Captain America: Civil War, as well as multiple entries in the modern Planets of the Apes franchise. He's been particularly busy over the past several years, lending his skills to movies such as Army of the Dead, Blade Runner 2049, and Free Guy, among other projects. One thing's for sure, he's not inexperienced. Ezra's Force-centric fighting style in Ahsoka is a lot of fun to watch, and if their social media activity is any indication, Chu and Esfandi forged a strong bond during production. The actor was commenting on his stunt double's Instagram posts as recently as December 2022, pumping him up over some snazzy pics. But you'd expect nothing less from the Ezra we all know and love, wouldn't you? The Fast and Furious franchise is famous for its high-octane car chases and spectacular crashes. But are all those wild stunts really as dangerous as they look? Absolutely. Stunt driver and coordinator Robert Nagel, who has worked on every installment in the Fast and Furious series since Fast 5 and recently oversaw the thrilling racing scenes in James Mangold's Oscar-nominated film Ford vs. Ferrari, spoke with Looper in an exclusive interview about his career. Before he became a stunt driver, he worked as a racer, though he switched careers when money became too big of a factor. Nagel explained, "Going down the back straightaway at 180 miles an hour and you're trying to think about where the next check is coming from, it just takes away from the passion of the sport." This is why Nagel tends to not worry about whether or not he and his fellow drivers are up to the task. "A lot of the guys I hire have a pretty solid race background, because I know I can put them in any car. Still, sometimes even the best drivers can lose control. Ford vs. Ferrari's most spectacular car crash, which occurs as Christian Bale's Ken Miles completes his very first lap at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, was based on a real-life event. Before working on Ford vs. Ferrari, the film's second unit director, Darren Prescott, was participating in a celebrity race when another car fell apart right in front of him. It was a right-hand corner, and the car went a little bit wide and dropped the outside wheels into the grass, and that turned the car sideways and shot it back across the track and it hit a concrete wall. Prescott was pretty certain he just saw somebody die. Luckily, Prescott was wrong, and the other driver was fine. When it came time to film Ford vs. Ferrari, Nagel and Prescott decided to recreate that crash in the movie. However, the final scene isn't there just for thrills, but to show how dangerous Le Mans is. After all, the wreck comes during the first 4 minutes of Miles' race, when he still has 24 hours to go. On set though, the real danger often comes from factors outside of the stunt team's control. When asked to identify his most dangerous stunts on the Fast and Furious films, Nagel explained that almost everything is inherently unsafe, saying, "There's so much going on with some of these. There are multiple cars and explosions, pyrotechnics going off around us. There's a whole lot going on and a whole lot that can go wrong very quickly." Still, when pressed, Nagel singled out one Fast and Furious scene that was especially dangerous, the opening of Fast and Furious 6, which he described as pretty hairball. In the sequence, Dominic Toretto, played by Vin Diesel, and Brian O'Connor, played by Paul Walker, race on a twisty Spanish road in order to get home before Brian's girlfriend, Mia, played by Jordana Brewster, gives birth. On one side is a sheer rock cliff, on the other, nothing but ocean. The scene was filmed on location in Tenerife, the largest of the Canary Islands. Nagel was in the camera car filming the action, while former Top Gear driver Ben Collins and rally car champion Mark Higgins did the actual racing. As Nagel explained, the driving wasn't the problem, the road was. "There was this road that they wanted me to go shoot that was deemed too dangerous for the general public to drive on. It's got a 1,000-foot drop-off into the ocean with these little blocks that will probably slow you down just enough so you get a really good look of where you're about to crash."
This time it ain't just about being fast.
In addition to the terrain of the road itself, there was another hazard that no amount of careful planning or skill could account for. According to Nagel, "I commented to the guys, some really bad potholes on that road. Somebody said to me, 'You know, those aren't potholes, those are divots from rocks. They've been falling off the cliff on the other side of you that's 1,000 feet up.' As if the road conditions weren't already dangerous enough, Nagel also had to navigate it at full speed without any practice. While Collins and Higgins had been racing for a week by the time they filmed the stunt, it was Nagel's first day at work. Nagel admitted, 2 very top drivers that have been driving this road for the last week and I've got to chase them down with this camera car. Yeah, it was a little scary." Fortunately, Nagel's skill and experience paid off, and he was able to film the scene in one take. It wasn't just digital de-aging that made Harrison Ford look 40 years younger in the opening of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Crew members also made a special mask that lives firmly in the uncanny valley. Stick around for a closer look at this creepy creation. Prior to the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, there was a lot of talk about how the film would use de-aging technology for the sequence at the beginning of the film, set during World War II. The goal was to make Indiana Jones look similar to how he did in Raiders of the Lost Ark. And the digital effect was mostly a success. While there's ample CGI on display throughout the rest of the movie, there are also good old-fashioned practical effects, including a realistic mask that may just haunt your dreams. On Instagram, special effects artist Waldo Mason shared images of a stunt mask used in Dial of Destiny. While the realistic skin texture makes the mask somewhat uncanny on its own, it doesn't seem all that freaky. But it's a different story when we see it in action. Mason included 2 pictures of a stunt double wearing the mask atop a motorcycle and standing in an office. The use of stunt doubles with prosthetics is nothing new for action movies. But out of context, the mask is definitely getting a strong reaction from Indiana Jones fans. There's been no shortage of pop culture similarities pointed out on social media. Several people compared it to Michael Myers' mask from the Halloween movies. And one Twitter user even wrote, It definitely looks like something from Dawn of the Dead. Other comparisons included the realistic disguises of the Mission Impossible franchise and the mask that Ryan Gosling wears at one point in Drive. However, the most common reference seems to have been to the prank show sketch from Netflix's I Think You Should Leave, which depicts star Tim Robinson covered in so many prosthetics that he loses his cool in a shopping mall. Many fans of the show were quick to point out the Indiana Jones mask's resemblance to the troublemaker Cole Havoc.
I'm not doing it. I don't even want to be around anymore.
Despite all the jokes, some film enthusiasts pointed out that they were happy to see practical effects being used in 2023. Another Twitter user stated, "Long proud history of these in movies. I'll take these over CGI any day because at least the brain knows there's a real person in the shot." It's great to see stunt performers continuing to get work in movies of this scale, even if Harrison Ford thinks they could back off every now and then. Stunt men and stunt women play crucial roles on film sets. They often do the difficult scenes an actor can't risk doing, as an injury would shut down production. With Harrison Ford being an octogenarian, there's little doubt that stunt performers were needed occasionally to help with some of his scenes. However, Ford still did plenty on his own, and even thought the stunt workers were sometimes doing too much. When speaking with Esquire, Ford discussed one scene in which he thought too many people were trying to help him off of a horse. As he described it, "I looked down and there's 3 stunt guys there making sure I don't fall off the stirrup. They said, 'Oh, we were just afraid because we thought, you know, and bah 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 bah.' And I said, 'Leave me the f*** alone, I'm an old man.'" Ford also said that he wanted to actually look like an older man getting off a horse. After all, Indy's advanced age is a pretty important part of his story in Dial of Destiny. A lot of hard work goes into making a movie. Someone needs to make a convincing Harrison Ford mask. Someone else needs to wear that mask. A third person has to shoot it in action. And a whole team of people have to fix any present issues in post. It's all for the greater good of bringing a story to the big screen, even if the mask looks so hot and uncomfortable that the person wearing it would probably want to rip it off or having an existential crisis.